Welcome to Undressing Intimacy, where we cut through the bullshit
Greggy,
so we can get naked.
you can't say that.
Why not? How would you say it then?
Well, maybe more like, welcome to Undressing Intimacy, where we undress emotionally so we can undress physically.
That's exactly what I said. Not sure what the problem is. Welcome to episode number
95.
Everyone, we are so excited today. We have a guest on, and this has been an interesting one because through our coaching and our podcast, we've started seeing a trend on certain topics, and we looked into this individual and we started following him and listening to his stuff. And then he coincidentally found us through a client too. And we've been trying to get together for so long, but we're so glad that today we have Tony Overbay with us today. And we would love for you to introduce yourself a little bit before we get started.
Okay, and thank you, Amy and Greg. Let me see if I can pull this off with a straight face. Okay, here we go. Let me channel my maturity here. Man, you guys are very difficult to schedule. It's okay. So for listeners, I've been a train wreck of a person to schedule with, and I had the best of intentions. But now I'm glad that we're here as well, because I found you guys when you had Jennifer Finlayson Fife on. I've had her on my podcast a few times. Those are great episodes. And
they are great episodes.
And I got to tell you,
your episodes.
Thank you. Very kind. I was trying to get that out of you. I'm going to be honest with you. I was seeking
validation seeking.
Right? Yeah.
Extraction.
But it was so good. And I don't think I shared this with you, but I liked it so much that I really did. I even went and I got the transcript of your interview with Jennifer. Both of you guys were so open. I know all the therapist words as a real live therapist, vulnerable and brave. But you really were. And I sent that episode to a lot of different clients that I was working with, kind of saying, hey, is this a thing over here? This is a goal. Because a lot of times you can tell somebody, or you can try to help somebody, lead them, guide them, stand right beside them and point things out, but they still view these healthy marriages as, and I say this in my podcast a lot, they view them as that isn't even a real thing, because I will start talking about what it can look like. Yeah. And I'll say, when all of a sudden the couple, they're introspect and they share things and they don't fall apart and there's genuine curiosity, and then I can't help myself, but I'll usually say, and what's that over in the corner? Is that a unicorn? Oh, and it's and here's the leprechaun chasing after it. Yeah, and it's like searching for the pot of gold, because it can sound that magical. But yeah, so I found you guys, and so I've listened to several of your podcasts since. One recently that I really enjoyed was the one talking about your marriage as a mirror, and it's exposing things. That was really good. I liked that a lot. What was the question? There we go. Oh, there you go. That'll probably be a theme today. Yeah, so I am Tony Overbay. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I joked with Greg and Amy that the bio is, and I know you guys have spoken places as well. It's funny because you don't think about it. You send somebody a bio, then they read it when you're standing there, and all eyes turn toward you, and that's the most egotistical part of you that says those things. So I've been a therapist for over 20 plus years. I did computer software as a marketing and PR guy, not as a programmer, for a decade or so before I went back to school to become a therapist. And even when I did that, I never anticipated that I would do therapy full time. And it found me. I love everything about it. We might even get into some of that today as we talk about the concepts around emotional maturity and ego defense and narcissistic traits and tendencies and that sort of thing. But when you really don't know who you are, you have this shell that's just so defensive. And it's funny to look back. When I was in the computer industry, I was in my 20s, pushing into early 30s, and just had to project this version of me that I thought was the right version, and it was confident. But I didn't know enough about the computer industry, nor did I like it. And now I look back on that, and boy, I bet I was a real tool to be around a lot of times than just pretending that I knew things, not being able to say, I don't know. And I went back to school in my early 30s, night school, which is really funny. That was even hard for me to admit for a while, because as I've achieved a modicum of somewhat success, I'll air quote that, I found myself wanting to say, but I just went to the University of Phoenix. I didn't go to some giant
I'm a
school.
grad. Here we go.
Okay, there we go, right? Go Phoenicians or whatever.
The same thing.
Yeah. And I would even have it down to when I would get announced, it was that he got his undergraduate and a degree in mass communications and public relations from the University of Utah, and his master's in counseling. Because I was like, that sounds good.
Yeah, don't throw that.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Yeah, such so immature, because I thought, well, then people aren't going to like the things I say. Anyway, it's fascinating. But then I find therapy, and I work part-time at that time for my church. And then I was handed three things that I did not know were the things that you maybe hand off to the new guy. And it was pornography addiction, same-sex attraction, and faith crisis. So, and I not knowing any better of anything, I was like,
The
sure,
bundle.
those sound good.
The
Yeah, let's do
trifecta.
this.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
good
yeah.
bundle.
So then, and it was quite the journey to go on. I was a part-time therapist for 5 or 6, 7 years. I still had a computer disk duplicator company in the forensic world and still not really
Yeah.
caring about it. Yeah. And then just started to do the therapy more and more full time, start a podcast. That's been 12 years ago, 11, 12 years ago, The Virtual Couch. And then,
Yes, that's where I found you, was the virtual
did you?
couch.
Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
I started
that,
listening like 6 or 7 years ago.
okay. Thank you. I appreciate that too. And that's one where I listen to podcasts for 20 something years. I also I'm a ultra marathon runner, which now I realize
Is
kinda
crazy.
nuts. Yeah. It's like, we go, what?
I'm like,
What was that
okay,
rough-
now I was liking you up till you said that, and I'm like, I don't
Okay,
know.
but I can
can't
still
do
get
this
you to
guy.
like me, Greg. Hold on. Right. I can still get you to like me. Because Greg, what was I running from? What was the pain
Yeah,
that
that's
I was
right.
trying to embrace?
That's right. Yourself is what you're
Totally,
running from.
100%. Yeah, yeah. Could I feel something maybe at mile 80, when
Yeah.
your legs are falling apart?
If I'm
which is
numb, I
wild.
can't feel anything. I'm great,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's so
Oh,
crazy.
wow.
And it also was part of my identity. People knew that. So
Mhm.
it's really funny to look at this origin, and maybe this is okay to ease right in this way. But yeah, so I'm a therapist, and there have been other things that I've done. I actually owned a small shaving cream company with a friend for a while, and I wish that would have taken off. Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, that would have been great.
Yeah, it was, and then part of a nut and bolt company of all things, that was really fascinating. That one's the one that I'm like, we're going to hit it big, that kind of thing. And so it's just been a fascinating journey. But once I found therapy, I realized, oh, this is what I eat and breathe and sleep and think about. And yeah, it plays so
come
much
alive.
into, yeah, it really does. It really does. And so then the virtual couch was fascinating because I start doing just anything that interests me. And then I did start noticing that if I mentioned the word narcissism, that then you get a little bump in the numbers. And for the first few years, I
Ours
was
is eroticism
yeah,
or
you mentioned
fantasy.
Is it really?
eroticism.
Hey, I
yeah.
love that
The
you're
bumps.
looking at that. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
It was
Oh.
fascinating. And then I just and I really was doing the thing of, am I the narcissist? I mean, that was my whole journey
Yeah.
trying to figure this out. And so then I start this separate podcast, Waking Up to Narcissism. And you know what's funny? Here's a hot take. I almost called it Narcissist in Recovery, which I'm really glad I didn't, because it turns out I'm not a narcissist, which is nice to know.
If
But
you
I'm-
were asking the question, then that was probably the biggest indicator right there.
Exactly. And that's my go-to, Amy. I mean,
Because you could
that's
ask the
one of my
question.
favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that if you're asking yourself, you're not, but then we can even get into that, because a good narcissistic person, if they do get a hold of the tool, can still weaponize it, and they'll say
Right,
it
they're going to
very quick.
manipulate it.
Tony
Yep,
said, if I
yep.
ask, then, well, am I? I'm not. Okay, good. Versus the person that's still trying to figure it out, asking a lot. And wait, am I the problem? And they'll go try to figure it
Right.
out, come back, ask their
Right.
partner. Their partner's still like, yes, you are. And it's like, doggone it. Okay, I'll go look again for another year of the journey. But I put out, by the time Waking Up to Narcissism came out, so that was, I don't even 5 years ago, that one, I had a whole premise that I was going to identify very, very confidently, because that's where I felt at that point that there was so much talk about narcissistic partners. So I'm seeing that as a couples therapist. I'm seeing everybody's ex is a narcissist, everybody's boss is a narcissist,
Mhm.
everybody's parent, if they don't do something right, is a narcissist. And so then I'm noticing that, okay, that word is everywhere in the zeitgeist, and narcissistic personality disorder itself maybe 3 to 5% of the population, depending on what study you look at. But I'm noticing that, but what we are all is emotionally immature. So even the
Yes.
podcast itself was founded off of that premise. So I say it over and over and over again, that narcissistic, and it's a mouthful that I have to get out every time, but it's someone who has narcissistic traits or states or tendencies, or is extremely emotionally immature. And so that's really, I
Yep.
think, what we're primarily dealing with. And then what was funny to me was the Virtual Couch podcast was my flagship. That's my baby. And then Waking Up to Narcissism, probably within 4 or 5 episodes, passed it in numbers, and it's continued.
Interesting.
It's probably 3 times as big now. Yeah, but I think we were talking a little bit off air, but there's still people that I didn't realize. I assumed, here's the ego, that people that are listening to one probably listen to the other. But then I think a lot of people that listen to Virtual Couch, they don't want to deal with the narcissist word. And so I would talk about it even on the Virtual Couch. But when you can go in and look at the really in-depth stats, even of where my top 10 markets are or whatever, let's say that If on virtual couch, it's going to be, it's wherever I was at the time, Sacramento area, it's Salt Lake, it's Arizona, it's Seattle, it's, whatever. And then the narcissism one is New York and Dallas and Miami and Los Angeles.
The big
Yeah, it was
hitters.
pretty fascinating. Yeah. So they really speak to different
location.
audiences.
You
Yeah.
know, the funny thing that happened to us is recently we had this huge bump on our podcast. We're talking, you speak my love language. I know. We'll get rid of the ultimate marathon thing.
Yeah.
Statistics and numbers. I probably look at them way too much. I've mentioned it on the podcast. We had this huge bump in our numbers. And so I took all the statistics out of our broadcasting tool and I put them in my AI tool and I asked AI to figure out what was going on. And they figured out that we'd had a scrape from Vietnam. So there was a bot that scraped our stuff and it downloaded a bunch of things.
Wow.
Now, the funny part is the bot apologized because it said, now Greg is going to be really upset because he really loves these numbers and he's going to have to know these aren't real.
Oh,
So
I
was
don't want to know
talking
that.
to my feelings.
Yes, exactly. It was. That's
But this is incredibly interesting because you talk about it, you see this word narcissism, and then you talk about this emotional immaturity, and don't we all have a little bit of this in us?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because the person that I had heard on yours, Jennifer Finlayson Fife, I really like that. She'll talk about, well, we all are a little bit narcissistic, because I'll have people mention that to me if they've worked with her. But then it sounds like if people get fixated on it, bless her heart, is that maybe she'll send them my way at times to figure that out. And because I'll deal in that space. And so even today, and I want you guys to know, this is how excited I was for this. I actually even wrote down notes. So I could we can break this out in detail if we want, because usually I just, like this free flow of thought and idea. But I really was thinking a lot about, I anticipated that if you guys even said, hey, define or explain narcissism.
Yes.
And I honestly, okay, so if that was where we were
That was our first thing.
question.
Good.
Let's
Good
define
anticipation.
it because it is so broadly used and so intertwined with some neurodivergence, some emotional immaturity. Like if someone walks in to you, how do you discern that they are actually that small percentage of a narcissistic personality disorder versus emotionally immature versus neurodivergent, like autistic or something like that? How do you do that?
Okay. And do we have time constraints today?
No.
Let's go.
Okay, because this is why I laid this stuff out, and now I want to make jokes and pretend that I'm wrote off of my notes, but I will look down at my notes a little bit. So I want you to know, because I really thought about this a lot, because I think before we get to that answer, but I promise we'll get there, that I want to lay down some groundwork, some foundation. And one of the first things I think is ego. And I think you guys will enjoy this, right? Okay, because you guys will talk about this stuff too. Because if you look at that ego, and please, I am a card carrying adult ADHD member. I did medicate today, but you guys jump in at any point, because I am fine with any interruption or anything, because I love the flow, that kind of vibe. But with ego, I've heard it described as your, this adorable security guard that's protecting you, right? Or it's the dog on the porch that's kind of barking at everything, even if it isn't a threat. Or it's your PR department. And I think that those are all, trying to protect that story that we tell or we think about ourselves. And this is, again, why I really appreciate the content you guys put out, because I think you do a nice job of, when we talk about, differentiation or the courage to be known, but I'm convinced that most of us don't really know who we are. So we're right.
Starts with us.
Yeah. So our ego doesn't really even know what it's trying to defend, which I think is why we get so reactive in relationships. And this will become pretty key, because that part is in the emotional immaturity realm. Because if somebody is defensive, they're often defensive about things that they don't like that somebody's accusing them of. But if you say something that is nice, they're okay. And so you're starting to see, and so that kind of leads naturally. So we go from this ego defense. Well, and
don't you think though that starts at your youth, the pattern in your young age? To me, it's like those patterns, your brain's trying to protect itself, right?
Yep.
The limbic side of your brain is trying to say, how do I stay safe? And so it starts these narratives about who you are and what how good you can be, and starts protecting you. And I feel like these patterns start at a very young age. Oh,
they 100% do. So even if I kind of skip around, I'll come back to the concept of, so we go from ego, let's jump to the end and then we'll work backwards, because there's this psychologist named Eleanor Greenberg, and I like her description the most, because it doesn't go into the DSM-5 categories of narcissism. And those are kind of, I could do a whole comedy routine on those, because I think there's like 9 of them. And if you hit 4 of them, you're not a narcissist. But if you hit that 5th one,
that's it.
Doggone it.
Put you on the tips of scales.
Yeah, get out of the marriage and do all that stuff. Okay, and before I even say that too, let me even say that the Waking Up to Narcissism podcast, a big part of that as well is, so I'm a couples therapist. I mean, I see a lot of clients a week, but still probably 15, 20 couples a week, and have been doing that for a long time. So I actually enjoy couples therapy, which I never thought I would.
I love it.
And it's fascinating because I think once you really understand the dynamic, the pattern, because so much of this is pattern recognition, which is pretty wild, right? Then all of a sudden I realized, oh, this is, I can speak this language fluently. And so people come to me, and then they're trying to determine, am I the narcissist? Is my partner the narcissist? And by the time we get everybody in, we're pretty emotionally immature. And if both people are coming in, definitely there isn't a narcissist in there, but one person might be so emotionally immature because of childhood things that we could talk about capacity. We can even get into that. But the premise of the podcast, the reason that became so important is people, let's say that then they put in the work and they go through, am I the narcissist? Okay, I'm not. Now we don't even know what tools to use. And then we've tried to find somebody, and then they're giving us tools. And what if that person doesn't really even know what they're talking about, which can be a thing. And then, so we have to self-confront, we have to get our partner on board. We have to have the courage to reach out to somebody, and do they have the tools? And it's usually going to cost money, maybe a little. If somebody knows what they're talking about, it's probably going to be a lot of money, could be. So then we got to stick with it. And so it's so easy to then, even when somebody starts doing the work, to then say, okay, I think I get it now, or my partner's not as engaged, or I don't even know if this is going to work. And so then they trail off. But if you get somebody all the way to the end, and they've either now have this incredible marriage, which I'm going to be honest, isn't the percentage that I thought it would be becoming a couples therapist. Maybe you can get 10, 15, 20% of people that will really do the work there. I don't know. But then you will find the people that get to the part where they are okay, the differentiation stuff. I know that I'm okay now, and I'm choosing you, but you're essentially, maybe let's say, opting out. And I love David Schnarch or Jennifer, any of these people talk about, you get to the point where you recognize, I deserve someone who is genuinely curious, willing to do the work, engage. And that person, they deserve somebody that's not continually criticizing them, or that they feel like,
or wanting more.
Yeah, wanting more. And so then, but what is so fascinating is then that is the point where then somebody will say, oh, wow, I should have just bailed earlier. And so my joke is that people write the books of, once they get to the end of that journey, they're essentially projecting this, well, if somebody would have just told me in a better way sooner, then I could have spared myself all this heartache, and I would have just left. And it doesn't work that way. Like, they have to go on that journey. Yeah.
It's
have
so
to go on that journey to be able to discern.
It's so crazy. I think one of the hardest thing that we've been able to do, and we had Jennifer on just for this topic, is that we'll get them to that point, and they'll know, hey, I'm in a place where I should not be in this relationship anymore. And there's a percentage of those we can't even get to move from then. Because of the consequences from it and what it means to do it.
To their persona, to their ego.
Yeah, it goes back to their ego, right?
Yes.
We've even had couples that say, I want a divorce, but I'm not going to be one that says it, so it's not my fault. Things like that. And to me, in coaching, that is the hardest part. We can get them to recognize, we can get them to look at themselves. And that's what we tell them from the very beginning. We say, hey, look, we can't guarantee this relationship will do anything, because everyone has their own agency to choose what they want to do. We can make you the best version of yourself and then help you make decisions on what you're going to do about that. But I believe the hardest thing we've ever come across is when someone realizes, I need to leave this relationship, and they just won't do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny. I like the way you're saying that we can get them there. I've said the same thing. I can do this. And I realize that's a me issue. Now I want them to fill in the blank. I want them to take the step.
Well, maybe that's my narcissism coming out.
Well, it's your healthy ego. We'll get there too. That's a good thing. Well, so this researcher, Eleanor Greenberg, so instead of getting into all the diagnostic criteria, I love it, where she says, all right, narcissistic personality disorder is a set of coping strategies from childhood that left the person essentially with three things: self-esteem that can't hold on its own. And that's where I kind of go with spoiler. You can't be confident ultimately if you don't know who you are. So you can see the game is a little bit rigged from the beginning. That's why I say we're all emotionally immature. And then the second thing is a need for validation to regulate your emotions. And so again, normal, because kids get their whole sense of self from external validation. Right. So the game is set up to be that way. And then the last one is that leads to lower empathy, because if I have to think about what I'm doing or how I'm making someone else feel, then that will crush me, and I don't even know who I am. And so that empathy, that lower empathy comes as a result of having, a lack of self-esteem and needing somebody else to tell you that you're okay. So I like that she kind of boils it down to, let's just start there. That's in essence what, narcissistic traits are that would lead to a narcissistic personality disorder. And then I think what doesn't get talked about enough is, so anybody, if they're heading into now, let's say adulthood, And that's been the thing they've been modeled, which that's where I love going with the, we don't know what we don't know. So it just is. And we're all emotionally
that's
immature.
The experience they've been living in.
Yeah. And so then I like
and maybe their family dynamics, or maybe
for sure,
just, what they marinated in.
Yeah.
So it's
and what
familiar.
they saw modeled, and it's familiar. I love the word familiar. I go to that one a lot. So then I always say like, oh yeah, we get together, everybody, I'll do the codependent and enmeshed, but that's a given because, and that's where I just recorded an episode and I went on a little tangent about, it's like if somebody's saying, I usually go with this, if my wife said to me, do you like Jane Austen movies? I don't know who she is, but I like my wife. So I'm like, oh yeah, I love Jane Austen movies. I'm assuming I would if I even knew what they were. But later down the road, then she's saying, hey, new Jane Austen movie. I'm like, who's that? But then she's like, wait, and I'm like, oh no.
You said you loved them.
Right. I thought you said Dane Austen. I'm not a fan of his, but Dane for sure. But then if I'm asking her, do you like sports? And she's like, oh, for sure. I'm like, what's your favorite? She's like, what's yours? And I say basketball. She's like, I love basketball. I'm like, this girl's amazing, because we're so afraid that if I say the wrong thing or if we disagree, that then they'll leave us. And Greg, I heard you saying that on that Mirror episode of, it's like, then we'll be abandoned and we'll die because we'll be kicked out of the tribe. So that's so wired, right? So we're codependent and enmeshed, go through life. Now all of a sudden we're having kids and making decisions. And all of a sudden I realize I like this other thing. And she says, you never told me that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right.
Who am I married to? Yeah.
So we keep going back into this,
like,
right? So then differentiation where one person ends and the other begins, a lot of uncomfortable feelings in the middle. So that's where I live. We're all emotionally immature and we're going to bump into these. I don't even know who I am, but I'm going to run into things along the way and and that's why I like saying, boy, every single moment is the first time any of us have ever been in that moment as us. So we think and feel the way we do because that's the first moment. So when somebody says, I thought you thought differently, then I could even, if I am confident in myself, I'm like, so did I. Like, who knew?
Now, I didn't know.
Shocking. This was great.
Yeah. Right?
No, it's very true. I talk about a lot like a pendulum, right? If you have differentiation in the middle and you have enmeshment and you have toxic independence on the other side.
Yeah.
We never live in that middle ground. It's impossible as a human to be there, right? Because you can't wake up and say, I'm differentiated today and I'm going to be forever. And so what I like how you say you're always coming back to the tendencies and stuff.
Yep.
And when you work on yourself and you realize these things, then you're like, oh, the braveness is like, I have tendencies and I'm still going to do that in my life.
Absolutely.
But I'm going to recognize it quicker and I'm going to get back to where I want to be faster.
I say that, and that where I want to be, I have to also accept the fact that it's where I think I want to be, but I haven't really even been there yet. Because one of the things as a couple,
so maybe when I get there, I don't want to be there, right?
Exactly, and that part, Greg, is a trip. Okay, go ahead, Amy. Yeah, what were you saying?
It brought up this quote that I heard this week, actually from Dr. Jennifer Finlayson-Fife, and I think she was quoting Snarch. So this is like a quote of a quote. So anyways, she talked about spirituality being the capacity to deal with reality. And so as you're looking at yourself saying, this is where I am. Can I deal with that reality? Can I confront it?
Yeah.
And then have the courage to move forward. That the confrontation of where you are as a person is where I feel like so many people are absolutely terrified of.
They are. And okay, now I promise we'll get back to narcissism and things too, because this one, let me find my soapbox, my wind machine, because I mean, this is a thing I'd like so much as a therapist in general. But I think one of the biggest challenges in mental health today is the more we talk about it, you would think that anxiety and depression would actually be lessening, but it's on the rise.
It's going up.
And and I was a cognitive behavioral therapist for probably 8-9 years. And then the last 13-14, I've been a big fan of a model called acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. Are you guys familiar with that one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So ACT, and forgive me then if this is all redundant, but as a cognitive behavioral therapist, you are operating from a place of you're telling somebody that when somebody said, man, I'm not even doing my life right, or whatever that looks like. And you're saying, okay, that's a negative thought. That's an automatic negative thought, an ant. Let's stomp it out, or let's get rid of your stinking thinking. And what's really fascinating, having sat with hundreds and hundreds of people as that cognitive behavioral therapist, you're saying, what's a better thing to think? And they might say, or I'm just trying. And I'm like, that sounds great. And they feel better. I feel better. They leave. Then they get in the native environment out in the wild. And then something doesn't go their way. And they're like, maybe I'm just trying. No, you kind of stink. Yeah. And so then they come back in and they're like, tug on it, right? Okay, let's try again and again. And I had one of my interns once, Nate Christensen. I've had him on my podcast. He's a great, he's so fun. But at one point he said, hey, you might want to stop crapping all over cognitive behavioral therapy, because you were the cognitive behavioral therapist for a long time. And he said, if you've got a new client coming in saying they want to run out into traffic, that's a bad thought. I mean, I think we can acknowledge that's a negative thought. So what's a better one? And I said, that's fair. And so when maybe the people that I'm working with are listening to a lot of my content, so they're maybe coming in already saying, all right, I don't like the whole narrative that something's wrong with me, my thinking's off, I'm broken. And that's why I always like to say, okay, no, what ACT says is every single one of us is going through life the very first time, and we think and feel the way we do because of all the things that led up to this moment. Nature, nurture, birth order, DNA, abandonment, rejection, hopes, fears, dreams, losses, all those things. So I think and feel the way I do because I do, period. And so that's a great place to start. And the reason I go there is because, Amy, I like when you're saying, yeah, if somebody, it's so scary to take it and admit, oh man, this is what I'm thinking versus
without the shame, without the judgment, without all of the, you shouldn't feel that way. No, this is my, like this is what my experience is.
The biggest thing I think that has brought Amy and I closest together as a couple too is one, understanding, like Jennifer taught me that I was a validation whore. So I don't know, you can join my club. I have a club.
I'm in. I've got shirts. I've got
that's what she taught me. So when I got that under myself, control over myself, being able to, like you said, acknowledge this is who I am. I'm seeking validation from everything was important. But then opening up to your spouse and be able to be, this is who I am. Now that's intimacy. As scary as hell, but it's intimacy. But that's really what draws you together. Not only you accepting who you are and what you're doing with it, knowing that you're 50% great and you suck 50% of the time, right? So there's that half and half.
Greg, may I carefrontate you now?
He's going to correct you.
I'm
like, he's coming in. He's coming in.
Well, and part of it too.
Are my percentages off? What are you going
No, it's your phrasing of sucking.
Yeah. And what I even love is that when you said like, 50%'s good, 50% I suck. And I love it. The verbal crutch that I think we all use currently is right after things. And I even have like a origin story.
Use it all the time.
People do. And it's so funny, Greg. Like, I think just because of my profession of sitting with people all day, every day, I literally remember the first couple in my room, and it was years ago, and I just kept thinking something's off. And then I realized, because both the husband and wife, the husband's basically anything he's saying, he ends with a right, but he's saying stuff that's pretty silly, and everybody knows that my wife should be doing this and this, right? And then you just move right into the next thing. I'm like, hold on, no, I don't think that was right. Or then she's, but he also is a big piece of garbage, right? And so then and I'm like, no, hold on, he's not, and so what's fascinating about ACT still is that it's none of that is helpful. And this is I've been trying to beat this drum in my own home for so long. And I will tell you, with not a lot of success, where somebody's saying, man, I shouldn't have thought that, or I really suck, and that's a little bit of a validation seeking move as well, for somebody to go, oh no, it's
because you want to, no, you don't think,
or like some reassurance.
Yeah.
So what would be a better way than to say that 50% I'm wonderful and 50% I'm not sometimes? I'm learning.
Exactly. And it sounds so cheesy, but I mean, all right, I'm gonna calm. I'm gonna back to the present here. Here we go. Because I got
him on the edge of his seat. Did you see that?
It's so good because I just put this, I don't even know if I released this episode yet, but so I get to work with a lot of people that, they went on their missions, they come back. And one of the things that I am just fascinated by is when they learn a language. I just think that's the coolest thing to talk about. And I know that sometimes, most of the time, they're not coming in and they want to just spend money and tell me about what that was like. But I'm just fascinated by it. I took high school and college German. I would go over there for trade shows, and I can't even speak it very much. But you would get these people that would go over, they live in the culture, and then I would just say, when did it start to click in? And they would say usually they start dreaming in it, or at some point they weren't translating, they were just reacting or responding. And this just hit me a few weeks ago, where I thought, man, from an ACT standpoint, an acceptance and commitment therapy standpoint, and I'm going to
dreaming in it.
and it's like, I honestly can't remember, and this is what sounds so egotistical, but I can't remember. I know forever that I would do the whole, man, I shouldn't have done that, or I can't believe I did that, or that sucks that I thought that, and it's been gone. So I mean, it's like, I'm fluent in ACT now because it's just, oh, that happened, or check that out, or, oh, I didn't see that coming. And it's just, so it can sound cheesy to tell somebody to reframe and say, man, 50% of the time I'm nailing it, and the other 50%, it is wild to see the way I'm showing up. Like I didn't expect that, but that's the vibe in ACT. Because why am I thinking I did it wrong? Because I can even go here deeper and say, I think hindsight, right and wrong, is such a hindsight principle. Because if I say a thing and everybody says, that was a great thing you said, I'm like, I said the right thing. But then somebody on the back says, hang on, I don't like it. I'm like, doggone it, did I say the wrong thing?
That's the wrong thing.
Yeah, right. I just said a thing. Here's the thing.
Right and wrong.
So then somebody, and it's so fascinating. So when somebody else is telling me, I don't like the way you said that, that used to collapse me, because that is validation seeking. But now if I'm, I think the more that you realize I'm saying things because those are the things I'm saying, or I feel the way I do because I do, that's a place to start from internal curiosity to say, well, look at that.
That's what I was going to say. That's where I was going to go. So the whole time you were talking about it, I'm like, the siren is like curiosity. And we talk about that all the way, like that. I say double down. You can never go wrong with curiosity. And we even talk about it from the brain itself, right? The only way to get from the limbic side of the brain into the thinking logical is to apply curiosity to it. And that's just what you were explaining. That's what you were saying.
Totally.
Hey, be curious about that other percentage of what's going on there, why you're feeling that way, or thinking those kind of things.
Yeah.
You also recently said something, and I don't remember which podcast, because like I was talking before we recorded, I have always listened to your virtual couch. I've loved that one. I remember the first time you talked about love and control, and that solidified something in me. Just clearly, I loved that concept. I love your four principles of a connected conversation, 4 pillars of a connected conversation. Anyways, in this listening though, and I think this was on your narcissism one, not your virtual couch, but I can't verify, but you said that the people who do the most harm are the ones who are unwilling to actually look at themselves to like question. And I was like, yes, like we that are too rigid in this idea.
I lived in that world, by the way.
Too rigid in like, someone else has the right, and I'm not willing to be curious and to be open or to explore.
Or I am right.
It's pretty selfish. I mean, it's like, and I've been using that word in my internal a lot more lately. Is that's pretty selfish to just say, no, this is it. Like this is, and now because now what's so fascinating about that one is now I need you to prove what I think you mean or what I think you're saying. So it lacks genuine curiosity. I might have curiosity as a checkbox. Well, okay, fine, tell me, but then I'm going to tell you wrong. And I think this gets into when
I went through the curiosity.
Yeah, I did. I checked the box. And I think what's so fascinating about this is it is part of there's so many different things around emotional immaturity that once you see them, it's hard to unsee. And one of them is the managing other people's emotions. It's the, I don't want you to think this. I don't want you to feel this way. I don't want you to think that I don't care. But there's another part of this that is, fusing your observation with your judgment. And so then I see you walk by me and you don't say hi. So obviously you don't care about me. So now, I can ask you, hey, why'd you walk by and not say hi? And if the person says, oh, I was caught up in something, they're like, right. You're not even being honest. So now you need to admit to me. Yeah. And so then, and we probably have all been in relationships, or maybe we've worked with people that then that person will then they'll cave or say, okay, no, you're right. I guess I don't care. And they fall on the sword just to get out of the discomfort of the moment. But they just betrayed themselves, and then they trained the relationship on how they're tolerating the way that their partner is showing up. So it is such a...
Well, and that gets down to so long where they'll start getting gaslit and they're like, can't figure out what's top and bottom. And you had a client recently who said that they were like recording all their conversations with their spouse because they're like, wait a minute, I'm pretty sure we talked about this. And
and I'm okay with that. I mean, that's funny you say that. I'm okay with that because why not look at the data? Because that will even get into, and look how I can go in so many tangents, I know, but in these 4 pillars, that's my marriage therapy model, 4 pillars of a connected conversation. And just very briefly, I've got this pre-pillar, which is separating observation from judgment. So I see, somebody is with this person. It's obviously because they only care about their money, or, that's what the observation that we make based off of this, or the judgment we make based off of an observation. So you have to separate it just to get to my pillar 1, which is assuming good intentions. That nobody wakes up and thinks, I can't wait to hurt my partner, destroy them.
Right. I just can't wait to take them out today.
Yeah. And then pillar 2, though, is a big one, which is you can never tell the other person that they're wrong, or I disagree, or I think what they're saying or doing is ridiculous. But then that requires a very big dramatic pause. And then I say, even if you think they're wrong and you don't agree with them and you do think what they're doing is ridiculous, because now we're going to get into the curiosity. But you can already tell that if somebody is unwilling to be curious, or they've already made the observation, or they already are assuming that this person has a motive, then they're gonna tell them, I don't think that's really what you meant, or that isn't what I said, and now we're gonna start heading off into the weeds. And I know
you're gonna defense, and then you'll be in war, and everybody's losing, right? Defense is that first act of war, and done. Nothing productive is gonna come from right there.
And then part of that pillar 2 is that I think memory is fascinating, adorable, fallible, that we use memory as a defense more than I think we're aware of. And so the things that we happen to remember, I think a lot of times we remember them in detail because we can make a case against our partner or for validation with memory. Yeah.
I recently read a study about memory, and they tracked it at 60 to 70% inaccurate.
For sure. Yeah. And
you're like,
probably
that
high.
is scarily high.
Yeah.
Right?
Is that the ego again? That ego we're talking about, trying to protect us, right?
Frames a memory and the perspective and the lens, and so the facts get distorted by whatever maybe judgment, thought, perspective you were in.
We really need that replay flag where we can throw the replay flag. And
well, you know what's funny? What's funny is, and I have a couple doing this right now where they're bringing in ring cam footage, and I'm saying, why not? And,
I was going to say, I have had couples that are like, we replayed it on the ring cam and we watched what happened. And
funny.
And that's typically that pure data.
Yes. And typically they're both not quite remembering it right. That's why I count on it, you know, and that's so then it makes that point. So even when I'm doing the couples therapy, that pillar 2 can't tell the other person they're wrong or disagree, even down to the point where if somebody says, oh, wait, they say, you know, and then last week or last Thursday, we did this thing. The other person's like, I think it was Wednesday. And then the couple will literally argue about Wednesday, Thursday.
Wednesday or Thursday.
Yeah, what day?
And I make the
fact check.
And it doesn't matter. And I make this joke all the time of like a new couples therapist will think, if we can figure out which day, the rest of it's going to just flow.
We'll solve all their problems.
No, not at all. And then you'll find out that it wasn't either, that it was, you know, and then, but then when you point that out, they're like, okay. So you see that was something people are trying to.
They love to get distracted on that surface level that never allows them to get below to the actual meaning of what was happening.
And
they will get so pulled away on every little slight interpretation or, you know, different little fact.
Yeah. Hey, so back real quick to the narcissism thing, because after we lay out this, you know, it's these 3 things where it's self-esteem that can't hold on its own, and it's a lack of empathy, and it's needing somebody else to validate you. What I like that this researcher, Eleanor Greenberg, says that she goes from there right into a concept that I don't think gets talked about enough either. And I've even tried to play around with a better way to say it so it doesn't sound so nerdy or clinical. But she says that you know, somebody with narcissistic personality disorder, I say traits, states, characteristics, extreme emotional maturity, lacks these 2 things. And I think this is so important to also recognize whole object relations. And that's the ability to see a person, including yourself, as a single complete picture with both good and bad qualities. So, you know, my wife can be the love of my life and need the home to look at my home before she goes to bed. I was not going to say that, Greg. Tell me more about that. Yeah. So like that
slipped out.
You're talking about one of your clients, right?
Yeah, not my wife.
No.
Never.
So that, but like that whole, if you think about the whole object, like you can see the other person as a whole person full of all the things. And so she says that they
strengths and quirks and personality
so from there, then if we lack whole object relations, then she says, then that means that we'll also lack object constancy, which is the ability to stay emotionally connected to somebody you love while you're frustrated, angry, or upset. So you can be so you can be furious and still know that you love them and they love you. And so I always add into there. So, because clearly from a differentiation lens, if I'm angry about something, that is a me thing. Whatever they are doing is making me angry. And then what the cool part about that is once you understand those 2 concepts, if you don't have the ability to have whole object relations and then maintain this object constancy with your partner, then there's only 2 settings. This is what's fascinating. Then the person is either special and perfect and amazing, or they're a worthless pile of
You get
garbage.
back to absolutes. You start talking absolutes.
Right. So then the moment that
Sith
you...
Lord.
Yeah, the Sith Lord.
Oh, yeah. And so then the moment you even say no to a thing, now all of a sudden you're a pile of garbage, you know, but now once you agree, then you're all good again.
Oh,
that goes up to a little bit a 1 up, 1 down too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because you're going to end up doing whatever you need to do to keep the peace. If you're, that's why the more emotionally immature on this scale toward narcissism, there is the lack of whole object relations and object constancy your partner has. And so you find yourself trying to figure out, how can I get back in their good graces? And then everything's great. And so that's why they can yell and scream at you. And then the minute you finally agree, they're like, cool, where do you want to go to dinner?
So much, yeah.
Right. And it's gone.
Yeah, I love you so much. Yeah.
While the other
devastated.
spouse is left there like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Which
totally.
is kind of why I went looking at your podcast, because, you know, I knew you from the virtual couch. I had a couple and I was like, what is going on? And I could feel it. And I was like, is this emotional maturity or is this narcissism? So I went and was binging all of your episodes, and what you just described right there, what was happening, and where she could, you know, if she didn't give the exact right answer, did you order dinner yet? No, I was about to. Oh, busted, terrible. How could you not do that? It was the worst thing. Da 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 da. And then, you know, she's feeling horrible. And then maybe an hour later, she happened to have done something right during the day that he came across, and now she's amazing, right? And she's like, I can't swing the swing.
Where does it cross that threshold, though? Where does it cross that threshold from being so immature in your emotions to actually a mental problem?
Yeah. Okay, you teed me up. Okay. This is perfect because this gets into, and this is why I love the combo of a good life coach couple and therapist, because I go to jokes with everything because of my childhood trauma. So then, it's like the coaches do a nice job of essentially laying out, here's what to do. And then the therapist is like, hey, and when you don't do it, tell me why. Let me really understand.
Yeah.
So but I like the question because we're going to get to two more nerdy terms. Have you guys ever heard ego dystonic and ego syntonic? Have you heard that concept? Okay, this is another cool one. Okay, you ready? Okay,
go for it. I'm all ready for this.
Right. So we laid out the ego, and then we got, so dystonic means something that bothers you. And so if you look at this is where high school English class kind of maybe paid off, because the prefix dys, like dysfunction, distress, dystopia. Right. So ego dystonic it means it bothers you. So somebody who has anxiety or OCD, and they know something's off and they don't like the fact that they check the locks, or they know that is not who they want to be. They're
slightly aware of, they're aware. Some awareness of this happening.
Yeah. So the symptom is at war with how they see themselves. So that's this ego dystonic thing. So people, if they show up in your office, my office, then most likely that is an ego dystonic view of self, because they know this isn't who they want to be. They don't like that about themselves, but they don't really know what to do. So that's important. And then ego syntonic means the thing feels like it is you. Syn is the prefix like in sync, synchronized. So an ego syntonic thought or behavior or feeling, if it's comfortably with the view of yourself. So instead of somebody like acknowledging, I have anxiety and I have this need for control to make myself feel better, instead of that, they're saying, I'm not anxious. I just have really high standards. And things work better when people do the things that I know best, that they need to do them.
They find a way to phrase it and frame it up so that it looks positive without being able to see the actual impact.
I think I'm thinking about that client you talked about that drove you to Tony, because I think I coached that same client a couple times for you.
You did coach him.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So now I know exactly. I can hear his voice when you speak.
Well, the difference though is, and there's Amy's kindness right there, where you're saying, oh, they think about, they're able to put it in a way that, but actually that is just what they are. That's how they think. So personality disorder is ego syntonic. So the person doesn't view what they're doing as a problem. And what is so fascinating as a couples therapist,
everyone else's response to what.
Yeah.
Why do I have to change? I'm okay. I'm doing it wrong. Everyone knows to change me around me.
I am providing everything. I am doing everything right. She just needs to line up and get
if she do what I want her to do.
And they are convinced
she shouldn't
of that.
Be doing this.
Yeah. So that's why
no matter what you say,
doesn't matter, because they are.
So even if you present at a different view or try and explore with them, no.
So sometimes I like to go to extremes to drive my points home.
Yes, let's do it.
I shouldn't even say this.
You may not have noticed.
But I even said I'm like, well, why don't you just go hire a whore? That's what.
What do they say? They're like, I thought of that.
You're like, oh, well, I can't do that. I'm like, that's pretty much how you're treating your wife, right? You're demanding that this change this way.
Yeah.
And so it's even being that extreme and them not being able to say, put it in perspective and say, well, maybe you have a point there.
There's no wake up point, right?
No,
like you can't. That's why I love the name of your wake up narc. Like I'm like, poking. And usually there's some level of insight, awareness, like self-confrontation, something with the client. And there's nothing.
All right. We have had such a fabulous time talking to Tony. We really appreciate the time that he gave us. And we spent together talking about all the different ways that we can be emotionally immature. It was a good reminder of all the ways I've done it myself.
Right. Everyone, it's universal. This isn't specific to any particular person. I think the universal thing about when I speak to every client, and also universal to Greggy and I, meaning that this was the primary work we had to do to start with, was working on emotional processing, emotional maturity. And it's the work that all of us get to choose to do.
We have so much content from this podcast with Tony that we're going to split this in two. So you're going to have week 1 and week 2. So next week, we will talk about the 5 rules or keys.
Yes. Which is why we originally brought him on, to talk about the 5 rules or keys of dealing with narcissism, what a narcissist truly is and what they aren't, the difference between that and emotional maturity. And we didn't get to it for a little while.
We talked around, we danced around it, and we got to it at the last 45 minutes of the hour and 30 minutes that we're on with him. So tune in next time for the conclusion of this podcast. But until then, please come visit us on laneforlifecoaching.com. We have group coaching that we'd love to have you join. We have free consults, so you can dial us up and we can have these conversations. We would love to meet with you.
Yes, we would.
Until next time.
Keep undressing your intimacy.